Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Hello, how are you today, Jackie?
It's good. It's actually snowing and very, very cold here in Chicago. Yes.
Wow. I am sitting here with my tea. Okay, so I want to tell you, and don't glaze your eyes over and fall asleep, but I have this amazing tea recipe. Are you there, Jackie?
I am. I'm waiting in suspense on pins and needles. I'm just waiting.
So, you know the emergency little packets? It's like a immune support.
Yep.
Okay. So I take those, I put it in hot water, take one of those, put it in hot water, add a little bit of honey, add peppermint tea, and a squeeze of lemon. It is delicious. And I drink those, and it kind of helps soothe my throat. And today I've got a little bit of a scratchy throat. I know the last episode I had one too. So anyway, if you've ever tried the medicine ball at Starbucks, similar to something like that, and it feels amazing. Plus you get that vitamin C and antioxidants. So
Well, that is awesome. I'm going to have to get myself some of that.
yes.
I've been big into the overnight oats. Me and my family have been eating those for the last couple of weeks. So we're
The overnight oats, what's that?
you mix rolled oats, Greek
Okay.
yogurt, milk, honey, no, not honey, maple syrup, and chai seeds.
And so what's the overnight part?
Well, you put them in that you have to mix it all together, and then you can add like peanut butter or whatever else you want. And then you make a serving, and then it has to sit overnight. And then every day you take a scoop, and that's my breakfast.
Oh, it's good?
It's amazing.
Do you heat it up?
No, you don't heat it up. Steve loves it too.
Really?
And no scratchy throat.
Oh, no
So,
scratchy
yeah,
throat?
I've been rocking and rolling so far. Knock on wood, I've not gotten sick. So it is December, but gotta
Yeah.
get night oats.
Yeah.
But I am excited. You know, you and I worked in the hospital for a long time. We worked at Ascension, and I think that's some of our favorite memories, right? I
Yes.
think I was there about 20 years almost. And so one of the leaders of the hospital when we were there, and still is a leader, as well as in the community and pretty much nationwide, is Dr. Cliff Saper. And he is a lead psychologist for Ascension. And also, when we were working there, the director of behavioral health services. And we have grown to respect Dr. Saper. He
Yes.
is funny. He is charming. He is easy to relate to. You know,
Yes.
not only is he a member of Therapy Players Comedy Improv, which we've
Yes.
seen many, many times, but he has also worked with tons of families on family interventions, helping them figure out what that secret ingredient is, as well as trained hundreds and probably thousands of psychologists across the Midwest. And so I am just so excited to start this conversation with Dr. Saper today, because any family that's worked with him has really seen the impact. And I've been able to observe some of his family sessions, and some of his interventions were just so creative and so heartfelt that I just literally saw the change with the families.
Yes, absolutely. I am so excited. I think, Jackie, you and I can sometimes be somewhat silly. And my memory, and as I was thinking about it this morning, Dr. Saper always allowed us to be our goofy selves. Like we can be the Lucy and Ethel, and some of the things we say or do can be absolutely hysterical. And he came from a place of accepting us and respecting us at the same time that just made you feel confident. I think that's the thing that I kind of think about Dr. Saper when I reflect on my time with him, of just laughing and learning together in a way that there was just a lot of respect. I just really, really appreciate him coming in and talking to us today. our listeners are going to be able to see and hear what we know about Dr. Saper. So, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for that introduction. I miss the goofiness from you two every day. So it's great to be here with you, and congratulations on having this podcast.
Well, and it's been fun. A lot of what we talk about is a lot of what we've learned from you and from other leaders in the hospital setting, as well as we've had a lot of guest experts come on covering different topics, which has been awesome. I think about our time together and I think about all the work you're doing now in communities. You've made such an impact on so
Mhm.
many who have trained under you.
So
What
many.
led you initially to this field? And Cliff, what keeps you coming back?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. When I was a teenager, just like most teenagers, I wanted to have my bedroom in the basement, to have some autonomy and independence and be separated from my younger siblings and to feel like I was a little bit more grown up. So I moved my bedroom to the basement.
Hmm.
And next door to me in the basement was my dad's office. And my dad was a psychologist, and he would see his patients in that office, and I would be lying in my bed in the other room with my ear to the wall trying to see what I could hear. And in fact, all I heard was patients' loud voices, often angry, and I could hear nothing from my dad, who apparently was just going, and so I thought, this is a ridiculous profession. It's certainly something I don't want to do. When I went to college, I went as an international relations major, was going to be a diplomat. But what I
Oh.
found is that I was most interested in the psychology courses. I was really interested in the study of human behavior. And even though I was trying not to get into psychology because that's what my dad had done, I just became more and more interested in what motivates people and how do you modify people's behavior and how do you affect change. By my sophomore, junior year, I realized I had taken no political science courses and had taken a ton of experimental and social and clinical psychology courses. And I got into how do you affect change not only on the individual basis, but how do you affect change in a family or in a group? And then, this is the late 60s, early 70s. How do you affect change in the community? And it
Mhm.
was the time of the Vietnam War and civil rights and student protests. And so I was really interested in the dynamics involved in how do you motivate people to change and how can you affect change in an entire community. So that's when I decided I'd go to graduate school in psychology. Especially I was interested in community psychology and came out to Chicago to do grad school. And it's worked out that I have been gratified to see change, that I can see that people change. I can see that families can change, and I can even see that organizations and communities can change. And that's what's kept me coming. Even if I'm in boring hospital meetings or working on policy, etc., I can always go back to I actually like being an effective change agent.
I like that. And you can see that in what you do and how you do it, Dr. Saper. I definitely like almost your mission, I guess I would say, the values you hold. You very much are aligned to that and what you do. You can
Hmm.
see that. Thank you. And
Thank you.
luckily, your dad, AKA Carl Rogers, maybe, with his, yes. Didn't influence you and make you not want to go into it. You've worked with so many families. What would you say is, using the phrase Jackie said at the beginning, the secret ingredient, the special sauce, families thriving in the face of adversity?
Well, I think the most important thing first is you need to give families hope. And I think it's real important for a family to understand that it's okay to be not okay, that none of us are perfect, that we make mistakes. We're learning on the job. I've often said to the families by the time and to parents, by the time you're an expert in how to be a parent, you've retired because your kids are gone. It's okay. And it's important to know that you're not alone, that you can reach out, that there are resources and people that will have empathy and understand you, and not to beat yourselves up about how your family is or is not functioning. We all have imperfections. One of the things I've noticed is a lot of families compare their children and their parenting style to other families and children and parenting styles.
Right.
And that always is a no win because some families look perfect on the outside. And all you have to do, in fact, we know as therapists, mention that your kids are not perfect and people start unloading. And the ones that look perfect, there's all kinds of problems and dysfunction. So we're all in this together. What we need are to learn skills and to learn how to get support. We're not alone.
I like how you said that because that's one thing we often say to families, parents in particular. Just because your child's struggling does not mean they're not going to be successful. It does
Yes.
not mean, part of the process is families do struggle and our children will struggle in it, how we help them through that.
Yeah, Jackie, I was just thinking the same thing, and I was hoping you were going to jump in and say that because you say that, and I think it is so helpful for families to hear that. So, yes.
I think, too, families need to know that there are developmental issues that all kids go through, issues of autonomy and independence and separation. Although it might seem difficult and challenging at the time, that's part of child development. And so we as parents sort of need to know, okay, this is to be expected. My kid is expected to be snarky as they develop their own values. It may be hard for me to listen to those values. This is part of growing up. I think that's important for families to understand.
Right. And I think the emotional maturity is different. One of the things, Cliff, when I think about my work with you, and I know we've done a lot of crisis response and debriefing work. And I think about even in crisis, how you always have this ability to stay calm and support families or clinicians around you. What advice would you give to parents who are dealing with really, really difficult life challenges?
Yeah. So what I usually end up saying to families is that they've lived with their child for all the years the child's been alive, 15, 16 years. And so actually, I'm not the expert. They're the experts. And what have they done that they felt good about, that worked, etc.? What has
Mhm.
their child done that has been good and effective? And they should look at me more as a consultant rather than as the expert. They're the experts.
Right.
I just see family dysfunction as just a regular part of family dynamics and taking into account the developmental challenges. And you mentioned that I'm in this comedy improv group that's made up of all therapists. One of the things I've learned from that is how important humor is. And so one of the ways I stay calm is to try to see the humor in situations and to help parents and their kids find humor in what's going on with them and what's happening in society and how they get along or don't get along, to be able to step back a bit, see the humor in it. The other thing I've learned from improv that's really helpful in therapy is for people to get into the habit of saying yes and rather than
Mhm.
no or yes but. If you're a good listener, you can always say yes and what you're saying has validity and this is what I feel. Too
Mhm.
often we as parents are quick to say no or yes but. So that's one thing that I find helpful.
No, you're talking about challenges. We've all gone through COVID, and it seems in some ways it's somewhat past. We're still seeing it pop up, but it was a huge change for all of us. And it was very different during the time of the pandemic. What are you seeing for families today? Do you feel like their challenges are more similar to what happened before the pandemic? Or do you think the challenges families are facing now are much different than before the pandemic? What are your thoughts on it as you're talking with families?
What I notice is that the challenges have a similar feel to them. And if families didn't have the tools before, they sure don't have the tools now in dealing with difficult situations. One of the things I've noticed lately, I don't know if you've all seen this too, but parents want their kids to catch up emotionally, socially, academically, and they want that catch up to happen really quickly. They got to catch up in school right away. We have to have tutors over every night, etc. And of
Yes.
course, that puts a lot of pressure on these kids. So I tell parents, be patient. I think eventually your kids will catch up. in terms of the social realm, the emotional realm, and the academic realm. And what you need to do is help your kids form small goals, come up with small goals to achieve rather than this overwhelming pressure of, I got to catch up and I got to catch up now. As you mentioned, we all during this pandemic have had a feeling of loss,
Hmm.
loss of control, grieving people that have died or gotten sick, feelings of loneliness and sadness, and feeling of loss of control and helplessness is something that it's okay to tell your kids that this is a normal feeling to have, that you're not alone, you're not crazy if you have that feeling. And these are ways we can build back some resilience. And again, to understand that you're not alone, that you can reach out, that there's help and support, and that a parent doesn't have to do all of the work in terms of how to help a kid catch up. Reach out and look at other resources.
Well, and I love that just as a theme overall. And that's one thing Robin and I have been talking a lot about is just really trying to share with families just resources in general and the power of just asking for help and even modeling that for our kids, right? Resources is a huge word. And I know, speaking of resources, you've been working on a grant, it sounds like, for some time. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what are some tips that you would share with parents about recognizing mental health challenges in children?
So, yeah, we were fortunate to get a federal grant, and we call it Connect to Community Care, C3. The purpose of the grant is to train community members on how to identify, assess, and refer kids up to the age of 24 who might be having mental health challenges or substance use issues. And so we came up with a curriculum that we felt community members could understand, and the training is free. In some ways it's similar to mental health first aid, but we feel that it's more psychologically and sophisticatedly based and in language that people can understand. And the training takes only 2 hours, and it's really good for not only for parents, for people in PTAs, for camp counselors, for librarians, for school staff, for teachers, for counselors, for emergency room staff, fire, police. So we're training community members because it's also to help destigmatize mental health and substance use, to be able to understand that, yeah, there are kids facing challenges, and these are some skills I could use in how to talk to kids, how to understand what they're going through, and then how to talk to them or their parents about what resources are out there and how to get those resources. Community members often don't understand, how do I talk to a kid that's depressed or potentially suicidal or is self-harming or has an eating disorder or is just sullen or acting out or spending all their time on screens. So this is to teach community members skills. And we've gotten a really positive response from the community. People want to learn, and they feel like they could dedicate a couple of hours to learning these skills, especially if they're working with or living with youth. It's a 4-year grant. We're starting our 2nd year.
That's
Great.
awesome. That's awesome.
I love that. Cliff, you've spent quite a bit of time in the healthcare. Talk a little bit and help our listeners to understand the continuum of care that's offered for children.
Yeah, and I think in wherever people live, they probably are programs that are somewhat similar to the programs that we have at Ascension, Illinois. And if people want more information about these programs than what I can talk about right now, my email is Clifton, Clifton .saper, S as in Sam, A, P as in Peter, ER, at ascension.org. And you can write me and I can send you all kinds of information. We have programs for children and teens and young adults and adults in geriatrics running. We do outpatient psychotherapy and medication management, which of course is what any kid and parent that's seeking support and advice, that's probably at the point that they would start. There are many more people doing outpatient treatment than more intensive work. However, there's some kids whose behavior at home or in school or in the community who have gotten into trouble, they may need something more intense and more structured. That can be offered in a partial hospital program where kids can come in for the day, where the average length of stay might be a few weeks, and get themselves stabilized so that they can then step back down to outpatient therapy or outpatient groups or support groups or working with resource staff at their schools. For kids that are really in danger of hurting themselves or hurting others or just cannot function, that's where we would see inpatient as appropriate. The length of stay inpatient is quite short. We want to just stabilize kids and help families learn some skills to keep their kids safe, and then be able to again step them down to an intensive outpatient program or a special ed program in a school, or in some cases, even residential programs, if it's going to be sort of a long-term journey in getting the kid back to functioning as they once did. So we have the inpatient, intensive outpatient, straight outpatient, and referral. You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about this too. When I was in graduate school, seeing my first few families, I was young and I looked like a hippie. And the family members or the parents would often say, "Do you have kids?" And I'd say, "No, I don't have kids. I'm not married." And they would say, "Well, how can you possibly work with our children? And you don't even have any of your own." And I'd say, "Well, let's give it a try." And generally, the kids had no problem with it. They were happy to work with me as long as I could get on the floor and play Uno with them. Then now, as I'm much older, parents ask me, "You're so old. I don't know. Your kids are obviously grown up. I don't know if my kid can relate to you." But I see the kid still able, luckily, to get on the floor. Kids, they don't care about your age as a therapist. They are happy that somebody is attending to them and listening to them and being empathic.
Yeah, it's about that relational
Yeah.
piece.
And we hear that too. I think for so often, families are so concerned about their children, and whether it's bringing them to therapy or bringing them to the hospital. I've had a talk with many parents of, my child doesn't want to go, my child's not happy, didn't enjoy therapy, or they didn't enjoy their first day of program. And one of the things I really try to talk to families about is, if you're bringing your child into the hospital program, let's say a day program or something new, a new therapist, it is going to be uncomfortable at first and it takes some time to adjust, but not rushing in and changing course because the child isn't happy or the child's upset, but really looking at it kind of like you would a medical issue. If your child had a disease, you wouldn't, not take them to the hospital because they didn't want to go. And so I think talking to families about it is going to be bumpy at first. Things might get worse before they get better, right? But it is a process, and it really is about finding those professionals that can support your family as
True.
well as be your trusted guides. And so I think we've talked a lot about that, is so many families are worried about how their children will react, where it's about really recognizing that this support can really help them gain those skills and ultimately get to a better place.
Yeah, and remember, we used to hand out a list to parents and said, "These are the things your kid is going to say." And
Yes.
so we sort of like prep them,
Yes.
Mhm.
because and then when we say, and all kids say this on their first or second day, "I don't belong here. I'm not sick enough. These other kids aren't like me. This isn't going to help me. I'm going to hate you forever." So, we
Yes.
had a list and we'd say to parents, "This is what you're going to hear." Parents were always surprised that somehow we could predict the future or do fortune telling. And like you said, on the first day, second day, kids are unhappy maybe, or because they're away from home and it's different. But by the end of the first week, they see that they're not alone, that there are other kids that have the same issues with their families, their schools, or their community. They feel a sense of, these are folks and other kids that really understand me. Plus, it gives them a respite from the environment at home that maybe some of them actually felt was toxic or difficult school situation. So it gives them a chance to learn skills, be in a safe place. And many kids are really yearning for that kind of structure and the intensity that only an inpatient or partial hospital program or intensive outpatient program can provide. They want that structure. Although they may rebel or fight against it at home, we see the kids after a day or two be able to settle down and really use the opportunity to learn new skills. And it gives parents an opportunity. Their kids, in some ways, are rescuing them, are saviors, because this gives a parent a chance to also learn new ways of behaving and new skills to parent.
So true. It was always amazing to watch those first couple days. And it was interesting after, as you said, a few days, the parents were right on in what was going to happen. So I think that was always interesting and enjoyable to see the parents not to feel so hopeless and to gain that back and not feel so helpless because, as you
Yeah.
said, Liv, they're learning those skills as well. So
Yeah, exactly. They're learning those skills as well. So the things that we're teaching their kids are skills often that parents need brushing up on too. And so they understand what we're doing with their kids, but also learning those skills themselves that will help in the relationships that they have in their family.
Well, Jackie, do you have anything else, or should we go ahead and ask Dr. Saper our 3 questions we ask every guest?
I think we can ask him. I think he will love these 3 questions.
Okay, here we go. So we're going to give you 3 questions, and we ask every guest these same 3 questions. You can answer 1, you can answer 2, or you can answer all 3. It's up to you. It's your choice. Let me read the questions, and then you can tell us what you want to do. Number 1, what did you do as a child or teenager that would drive your parents crazy? Number 2, what is the biggest difference between children and teenagers today and when you grew up? And then number 3, what does successful parenting mean to you? Dr. Saper, what do you want to do?
Oh, Robin, this is hard. I'll take what's behind curtain number 3.
Okay.
So there are 2 things about successful parenting. Number 1, first be a successful human being, which means take care of yourself, have self-compassion, have an ability to love yourself and love others, be a good listener, be empathic, be an excellent communicator, be able to set your own small goals, achieve those goals, and reward yourself for achieving those goals, and work on yourself in terms of decreasing your bad habits, whether it's gambling or self-harm or smoking or whatever it is, and then have a sense of humor about yourself and your loved ones. And most of all, be a model to your children of what a good, successful human being looks like. You have to demonstrate resilience. And number 2 is, as we've been talking, to be a successful parent, you need to guide your children in setting short-term goals for themselves. You need to reinforce their positive achievements. You need to be an extraordinary listener. You need to empathize with their feelings. Don't say, oh, it's not that bad, or at least, or there are lots of other fish in the sea after they've had a breakup. Establish and set limits on things that really matter. For example, holding hands when crossing the street with a little kid, or setting limits on no drug use at home. And then be able to compromise and collaborate on those things that aren't life or death. So, for example, what they want to eat or how they want to wear their hair. Those are things you can compromise and collaborate on. And then third, ignore most of the little stuff if you can. So what they want to wear to a party or their choice of friends. So there's setting limits on life and death issues, compromise on most issues, and ignore a lot of little stuff. And then I think it's important to be a successful parent to ask your kid, what do you need right now? Do you need a hug? Do you need to vent? Do you need a timeout? Do you need advice or guidance? And then, of course, the end is none of us are perfect parents, and that's okay. All families have, when you scratch the surface, you can see issues and challenges and problems. None of us are perfect. And then never compare your kids to other kids, whether it's their siblings or whether it's the kid down the street who is on the track team and going to Harvard. Don't compare your kid to that kid in front of your kid. That's what I think goes into successful parenting.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, it's always great to talk to you, and I'm excited. I'm excited all the work you're doing. You never stop, right? When I think you're going to stop, it's like, there's Cliff again.
he's still there.
But that's a good thing. The world needs a little bit of Cliff.
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, I miss you guys. I'm proud of you for doing this podcast and all the other things you're doing to help parents. Parenting is not an easy job. So people need all the support and resources they can get from people like you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jackie, I think it's time to say goodbye. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for listening today, everyone. Remember, in the episode notes, we'll have the resources that Dr. Saper spoke about, and his contact information will all be there. And I think this is a goodbye.
Keep drinking that tea.
Keep drinking that tea. That's awesome.
Bye. Bye, Jackie.
Bye. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.